This is the Dogghouse Podcast, and thank you for being here today with us. I am your host, Rob, joined by my younger sister and co-host,
Emma.
This is episode 15. We are super excited. Thought experiment to start out the show today. I want you to think about your current role in life, whatever that may be, talking about having to do with career, income. Are you a student? Do you have a job, career, whatever that may be? I want you to think about that. Now, I want you to just think about the moment, think back when you decided on that path, essentially. Think about when you chose and why you chose to do what you are doing in your role in life today. Now, you're probably thinking to yourselves about that moment, and now here's a question. We want you to think about why, essentially, you decided to take that path. And here's the craziest part and what we're going to get into. We believe that it wasn't fully your decision to choose that path. It wasn't even mostly your decision to choose that path. We believe this is because of groupthink. Emma, what is groupthink?
So, groupthink, I am sure you have all heard this term
That's
before.
Something I'm sure everyone's heard of, yes.
But what does that actually mean? And how would that mean that you're not making your own decisions? That doesn't really initially probably make a lot of sense.
Right, because commonly this is a pseudo-psychological sort of social phenomenon that's like not super talked about, honestly.
Yeah, but we really feel like it needs to be talked about because of how impactful it is. So groupthink is essentially doing what people around you do. We have talked about this. If you haven't seen our latest episode, Playing Life Like a Video Game, we get into how you are suggested a lot of things in life. I would go check that out. But
definitely,
that is pretty much what we feel like groupthink is. It is looking at the people around you, seeing the decisions they're making, taking the advice they give you, and basically living your life and making major life decisions that way. That's why we started out with that kind of thought experiment of like, what are you actually doing in life and what's the why behind that? How did you get there? We believe that with a lot of people, it's just mainly influenced by everyone around them.
Right. So Emma just said it. Using what everyone else is doing around you, but using that as real data and evidence to base your life decisions off of without even realizing it. The key, without even realizing it. That is the scariest part. Not that, but that's why it's so important and why we feel like we got to get into it. It can happen without you even noticing, and then it's too late.
It's a super subtle thing, and part of the reason why we're bringing this up is because we have actually personally been affected by groupthink for a lot of our lives, and we feel like it was a big barrier, and it held us back in doing what we really wanted to do, which is why we feel like it's so important to get into what it is so that you understand kind of how it might be affecting your life. So we're gonna kind of get into some of our childhood experiences on kind of how groupthink has affected us.
Absolutely. And before we do, let me just touch on that. What you said before. No one is exempt. This is why we're talking about it. We believe not even we are exempt from groupthink. It's just a natural way of the society and modern world we live in today. That being said, Emma, would you like to get into your personal experience first?
Absolutely. So, I have mentioned this in past videos, I'm sure, but when I was younger, I did a bit of writing, and I actually did not remember the specific fact, or I don't know if I don't block it out, but it's just something that I don't think about a ton, is that in middle school, I was in some writing classes and wrote a lot of original poetry and some short stories, and I would I remember happily volunteering to share those like in front of my English classes and being like proud to do that.
No, honestly, can we just take a second? I do have a genuine question, because if I was I remember when I was that age, no, you couldn't pay me any amount of money to do that. You said happily.
Yeah.
Do you have any like things you can be like, oh yeah, this is why I felt, obviously I was so happy to do that?
Okay, not trying to sound conceited in any way here.
But go ahead.
But what I was writing, compared to what everybody else in my class was sharing, I felt like it was better. And I felt like it was more impactful. And I wanted everybody to hear what I wrote because I felt like it was better than theirs. In all honesty.
That was my guess. No, I just think that's a super cool little side note there on that.
So yeah, side note, I was super proud of what I was doing, which is crazy. And then as I got older, got into high school, I just kind of stopped writing, definitely stopped sharing any sort of creative work, honestly stopped creative endeavors. And I was realizing that I think a big reason for this was because all the girls, specifically because I was mainly just had my girlfriends around me and that I went to school with and observed, because I was always a big observer, were not worried about the types of things that I wanted to be worried about. They were worried about, what did I write down here? I literally wrote down.
Yeah, what were they worried about? Because I'm assuming, I can speak for us boys out here, we were not talking to the girls back then at all. Of course, that was forbidden. We were all definitely same thing. Like, it all started to become, we care about whatever we, the boys, care about. It was a little gender specific, honestly, on a side note.
For that young of age, it was kind of gender specific. So for girls, it was the friends you had, sometimes the amount of friends you had, the boys you had a crush on, clothing, and social media, and like texting people. That's what all the girls were worried about. And I always knew that I didn't care about these things. I never really wanted to be popular or have a ton of friends or have the nicest clothes. I knew I wasn't worried about those things, but at the same time, I didn't have enough confidence in myself to embrace my like uniqueness and what I really wanted to do. And I realized a lot of that was because of groupthink and what everybody else around me was doing. I thought that's what I needed to try and worry about, or like get myself to worry about, if that makes sense. But that's not the case at all.
I think that is a super clear example, right, in her story of groupthink taking that pure form of individual expression of self and devaluing it to a point where you can no longer comfortably use that. And that's honestly sad to me. I don't know how else to put it right now.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I actually got a little sad when I realized that I had missed out on all those years where I could have been developing those skills if I had just not been worried about trying to worry about what everyone else was thinking about.
And it's only natural. And like we said earlier in this episode, no one's exempt. So I don't think there was really any avoiding it. But it's just sad that it can happen from such an early of an age to where by the time you're an adult, by the time you're a young adult in our age, you don't realize that is programmed in.
It gets programmed into like your brain, or at least it got programmed into mine, and I had to work to reprogram myself out of that.
And so from your kind of clear example of groupthink at a young age, was there any other points you wanted to bring up from that? Because I was just thinking of my personal experiences, and it's different, but there's definitely some very key similar takeaways.
Yeah. I feel like let's get into your experiences and then some common takeaways.
No, because like, so my experience, my senior year of high school, the decision to attend college is what I'm getting at here, guys. up until very recently, I assumed I had made that call almost fully. Yes, I had other influences, but it was me using my own logic and reasoning and what I wanted to do. Here's the reality check. That decision was not mine. I realized that was made entirely for me. Does that make sense, Emma?
It totally makes sense.
Like,
it's like
yeah.
out of your hands.
By the time I got there,
it was
by
all
the time
built
I got
up.
there,
Yeah. In my mind, it was all built up from like those subtle things that you had programmed in from like high school and those times. And yeah, you didn't feel like it felt like your decision. And sometimes I feel like we need to feel like it's our decision as like a defense mechanism.
That's
because
really important, honestly.
we feel like, at least for us, it's very important that we have control over our lives and situations, autonomy. And I feel like that's important to a lot of people when they're thinking about these big decisions they make, which is why it's so hard to kind of come to terms with maybe it wasn't fully my decision. But there's a lot of things you can learn from getting out of that and like making those realizations.
There is so much. And just like Emma was saying, those lessons you learn from just having that humility for 2 seconds to realize and assess, was that my decision? Or another way to put it, did I actually want that? And so for me, back to my college personal experience real quick, I won't get into college itself, just focusing on the decision to attend. By the time I got to the end of my senior year of high school, I fully believe that decision had already preemptively been made for me by the collective of everyone at school, my teachers, obviously. Education pushes to education. My parents, our parents, both college graduates with master's degrees. They are going to push education. I didn't trust myself, essentially, to make that decision by the time I got there. Everyone else had more credit. And that is sort of a good lead into all those other lessons and stuff you can take away from being affected by groupthink. 100%.
I think that is a great transition point into one of the main things that we want to talk about. It's a very crucial step in how to overcome this groupthink or get yourself to step back a little bit. A big part of that is trusting yourself, just like Rob was saying. And
yes,
this is something that I did write down when we were preparing, is I did not trust myself enough to stand out and be unique. And trusting yourself to make the right decision for you is so important, because you know yourself the best. These people that are giving you advice, telling you what to do, these people around you, they're not you. They don't know you, but you do.
They don't have your personal experiences. They don't have your day-to-day life, and they don't have your pain and your brain, your soul, your experiences. It's just
everything that makes you you. They don't know all of that. Only you do.
That affects you is what probably maybe you should be making your decisions based off of, is a quick way of what we're getting at here.
And again, bringing it back to trusting yourself.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Because you are the person who knows yourself the best, you need to trust in that when you're making big decisions for yourself, and trust yourself the most. Use data that people give you. That's what we always do. Take everything into account, but ultimately trust yourself.
Truly like computers. It's crazy, but yes, data and trusting your analysis of that data, interpreting your results.
Yes, for you, and what is ultimately going to bring you to where you want to be. That's a huge thing. And that is a little bit of our tips on how to overcome.
That's where it starts. Truly,
where it starts, that's like getting to know yourself and what you need, and then trusting yourself to make those decisions is all we can really say as a starting point. It's really a lot of hard work and like introspection, but it's really worth it to be able to come out of that more independent in like these decisions you're making. 100%.
Like, and honestly, you just put it, I couldn't agree more. I really don't have anything to add, guys. Like, I'm just going to focus real quick on the taking your self-pride down 2 notches for just 30 minutes and thinking about your life. We started the episode this way. Think about it. That's what it takes, and that's where growth can happen truly, and why thinking about kind of like, how much do I trust myself and my original unaffected thoughts from the outside world?
Absolutely. We are big believers in trusting our guts, and
Yes,
we have relied on that for a lot of things, and it's really carried us through making some of these bigger decisions without a ton of validation. Trusting ourselves and our guts, and that, like, we can say for sure that that's something worth giving a try.
And that those are 2 really, in our opinion, not easy but doable and palatable ways to kind of start overcoming groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond how to overcome groupthink, I think this is where we're going to transition into, more importantly, why you guys should be concerned or aware of this.
Absolutely.
Why you need to overcome groupthink, essentially. To illustrate why this is important, why it's so important to break the cycle and the close loop of groupthink. We're going to start with our personal story.
Yeah, we're going to use kind of the Dogghouse channel as an example.
Totally. So you're watching this right now on YouTube. You're seeing the results of everything we are doing. And behind the scenes, there's a lot that doesn't get put onto the final product. So what are we getting at, Emma?
So, yeah, what we're getting at is this is not just us coming together once a week and sitting on a couch and talking. We do so much more for this channel and for these videos. Everything that you're seeing at this point, we do ourselves, which we're super proud of. But being content creators and starting this podcast is not something that we necessarily saw ourselves doing.
And it's not something that necessarily anyone our age does.
And it's definitely not something we considered or we thought that we would commit to so much and that we would want to grow into something a lot bigger. And the only way that we were able to come to this decision and make this commitment to put in these hours every single week for this channel and for this podcast was by shutting out the group, shutting out what everyone else was saying and doing, and fully looking inward, making this decision for ourselves and finding really good reasons why we wanted this.
And by doing that, we were able to break the loop of the group thought and overall consensus, which was too risky, probably not going to work. A traditional career would be safer, essentially. And that's huge, Emma, to us.
It really is.
Guys, we do not take this podcast lightly.
We don't.
Okay, this is something we need to get into, actually.
Yeah, just really fast. I don't know if this is the first video you're seeing or if you have been following our channel, but every single piece of content that we put out, we put so much work into, and we are very picky about the product that we put out.
We are insanely picky and obsessively perfectionist when it comes to the Dogghouse channel and our product we put out for you guys. And we don't take it lightly. It's something that required that such a high level of commitment. It scared us.
It really, really scared us.
And this is not to flex and say, oh, look at how hard we work. We're trying to, we're not trying to put rose-colored lenses over this at all. It is not pretty in the day-to-day of what we do for this. it's that level of commitment we decided to kind of use as the breaking out of what we're supposed to think.
Yeah, it was a full coming out of that mentality, breaking through those cycles and breaking through that programming that had been in our brains and been still being fed to us. Like to this day, it's like making that choice every single week, every single day to keep going. But because we decided and had really good reasonings behind why we wanted to do this and have very specific criteria for the product we want to put out, that decision, because we made it so far back.
Yeah, it helped, like, ultimately.
It's the only reason we're still here. Yeah.
Almost 4 months in, consistently for 4 months, and doesn't seem like a lot, but it's huge for us. Mm-hmm. And that's what's important, and that's what we're getting at here.
It's about what's important to you and what you want.
And that leads into, we just covered why it's important for us and to break that cycle, and that leads exactly into why it's important for, we believe, you.
Yes.
To be thinking about, am I being affected by the group mentality and how I make big life-altering decisions that affect me the rest of my life? What do you want out of life, dude? What is it that you are trying to do? What does the inner child, the kind of middle school version of you that gets up in front of class, what did that purest version of you want? How far removed is it from the path you've chosen? I know that sounds all dramatic, but literally,
if you really think about it,
I feel so strongly. Think about this.
Yeah. And I want to just touch on the point you were saying, what do you really want? The amount of times that we have heard from older adults, like,
oh my goodness,
I wish when I was your age, I wish I would have done this when I was your age because I can't now. And I realize now that's what I want.
And
or wanted. I knew that's what I wanted, and instead I chose this, and now I wish.
And we all, at least for me, I can speak for me. I used to, as a younger man and a teenager, I would write that off pretty quickly. Honestly, it as generic life advice from an irrelevant old dude. I now hold that as one of my core beliefs. Listen to what they are saying. I wish.
Think about what it means. Like, the first time someone told that to me and I really listened and thought about what that meant, I was like, oh, shoot. So what I'm hearing is that I don't have as much time as I thought, and these decisions that I'm making right now might screw me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, not to even be pessimistic.
Yeah.
Not to be pessimistic, but honestly, they say it with a tone where you believe them. And I'm thinking about that experience, or this specific experience where this adult who we both know said this, and it had a huge impact on our decision to start this podcast, guys.
Honestly, one of the biggest impacts. Because this is someone I know personally, and it was just like, to be told that at that point in my life just really changed my perspective and how I moved forward with my college experience.
Absolutely.
And it just was kind of a domino effect to this moment right here. And it's kind of crazy, and none of that would have happened if I would have stayed in the mentality of, I'm still just gonna do whatever, follow the crowd, do what everyone else is doing.
See.
We'll see what happens.
Oh, I don't know yet. We'll see. Is just the overall mentality.
The default, we'll see what happens, we'll see where this goes, usually ends up being you are influenced by everyone around you, not even realizing it, and now you end up where everyone else is, and you wish that you would have.
And that's the point it comes to, where you have that feeling of doom. And, oh, I wish I would have, and no matter what I do right now, I cannot go back and think for myself at that moment and make the other decision. What we're getting at is you, in some ways, will be locked in. Follow the path 10 years down the line.
Think about how these decisions you're making are going to affect you 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, 25 years in the future. Because when you are a young adult making any sort of life decisions, they affect you a lot more than I think people realize.
It's so hard to see it, dude. Side note on this, as a young adult, because I've been a young adult for a minute now, kind of scary. I'm not going to be considered a young adult in a few years here, but it's so hard as a young adult to zoom out and think and realize you will be 30 one day. And because of that, it's so hard to use what you want as a guiding principle for making your life decisions. And speaking of guiding principles, maybe this is a good moment to bring up our take it home kind of point for this.
I think it is perfect. We have kind of a golden rule that we have put down on paper that we have been following, but I'm glad we have it written down, and we want to share it with you on kind of decision making, big life decision making in general.
And this is something personally is our rule. We are not saying this is the only rule to use.
No, it's
not at all. Use data, analyze and interpret data best you can.
Yeah, just like we've been saying, do what's best for you. This is just the guidelines that we have been following that we want to share.
What is that golden rule of thumb?
If you cannot look at a decision you've made and trace it back to your own personal thought processes all the way to the beginning, all personally you, that wasn't your independent decision.
And it was influenced and impacted, unfortunately, by groupthink. And that's just the clearest way we could put it, with a takeaway kind of tip on how to overcome that. I'm going to take it full circle. At the beginning of the episode, we had the thought exercise. Think about the decision. Think back to when you made the decision to choose the life path you're on right now. Essentially, let's take a career, for example. If you're in a career right now, I'm sorry, it's us right now, me and you, buddy. You're in a career. Think back to your decision to choose that career.
Ask yourself the question that we just asked. Trace back your thought processes in making that decision.
Was it because you were dying and were stoked and really wanted to be account manager for a, big corporation? Maybe it is, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But have you thought about it? And that's just what we wanted to talk about today, guys.
100%. We just want to leave you with an invitation to think about these decisions with kind of this framework. You might figure out that maybe some of these bigger decisions were influenced by others more than you initially thought.
And that is where the whole process of breaking free of these groupthink closed mentalities starts. Assessing your decisions and using that to think of what you really want. And honestly, I think we're probably going to wrap it up here.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 15 of the Dogghouse Podcast. We really appreciate you being here. Make sure and subscribe. If you haven't, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think.
Definitely subscribe, leave a like or comment, interact with the video. Would really help us out. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Stay tuned for so much more content, guys.